Hello, friends. Hi, I'm here. Happy Wednesday. Yes, that is today. I know what day of the week it is. You know, summer vacation for teachers, the days just kind of start blending together. Hi, friends. Welcome in. I'm really excited. We're going to be doing a bunch of different stuff, at least 4 different dice pours today. I've got some plans. I've got some chaos. It's going to be great. We're going to start with some old molds. I'm going to be testing my new Chonky D20 mold that I made. Wow, this is not going to focus. But we got a big boy now, which is really exciting. We're going to test the mold out that I made for this die. We're going to do some Galaxy stuff. I'm really excited. We're going to start with an idea I've had for the Blake Lively Met Gala dress that I've been excited about. You know, sometimes you just open up your phone notes and you type out a bunch of ideas and then you don't get to any of them. Today we're going to get to some of those. So I'm really excited. As I'm going through things, I'm going to walk through like what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, some different options if you are making dice or looking into getting dice. I'm happy to answer questions. We're just going to be here. It's going to be nice and chatty and casual today. I am not wearing gloves yet because I'm going to be doing some mold prep before I get into resin. And it's just easier to do when I'm not wearing gloves. But safety is important when you're working with resin, so I am in a well-ventilated area. I do have a respirator, and I will be wearing gloves once the resin gets open. We are going to start, for this Blake Lively dress, with some foil sheets. We've got this lovely, it's reading more yellow on camera. It's a nice copper that I'm really excited about. So it's, you know, copper and blue, like bluish teal. We've got some star glitter. And we're going to actually start by doing this thing that destroys paintbrushes. Say hello to this really sad, trusty foil paintbrush. If you're going to do this, don't use an expensive paintbrush because it will not look good when you're done and you will be sad. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take pieces of this foil and I want to get it pressed into the mold. So I'm just going to kind of start breaking it off a little bit. Yeah, you know, sometimes that does look like a person's hair, for sure. We're just going to shove the foil in here and just kind of smoosh it around a little bit to get it to start breaking up so that it starts looking a little crumbly inside your molds. That's the vibe we want. We want it to look crumbly. This takes forever, but it is so worth it. And we are, for this design, I am prepping, this is a jewelry mold. So I have, well, it's jewelry and also just extras. So I have an extra D6 in here, an extra D20 in here, an extra D8 in here, and then the D10, D%, and then the D4 pair. And I use the D4s and the D10s for like jewelry, or to replace dice that don't make it, and then the D6, the D20, those are just extras, because I had room in the mold. And we're going to use all of our space so we can get as many dice as possible. There is not a rhyme or reason to this. It's definitely just a do it until it looks good. You could do more foil, you could do less foil. You don't need it to be touching every single face. I'm just kind of shoving it in there and hoping for the best. Because that's what we do here. We just hope for the best. And this is why you don't use paintbrushes you like, because you're literally just smushing it around in there. The first time I did this, I did use an expensive paintbrush and quickly learned from my mistake that you don't want to do that. It's not worth it. It's not worth the sads you're gonna feel when your favorite paintbrush gets ruined. So yeah, I know a lot of people, there were a lot of thoughts about some of the Met Gala stuff. I don't really watch the Met Gala, but I did see this dress and I was feeling very inspired. So this is going to be like a clear And I'm debating if I want to try and do the pink and the blue together or just the blue, because I know she had that like pink look and then it turned into the blue. I haven't quite decided if I want to just do the blue or throw in some pink in there. My concern is that the pink is going to mix with the blue instead of saying separated, because whenever I try to do pink and blue, that tends to be what happens for whatever reason. The D20 is always the hardest to get the foil into, so you end up with just foil all over the edge of the mold here, but that's fine. Sometimes you just stick a little on the end of the paintbrush. Come on. Because that gets through the hole a little bit better. So yeah, we have our first one prepped here. Some of them I put more foil in, some of them I put less foil in. I don't want it to look super consistent. We live for the chaos here. So then this is just a regular 7-piece mold. This one has the logo in the D6. That is my preferred placement for logos. I think it looks better because it's a little bit bigger of a space. My logo has some kind of small lines that are harder to ink on the D20s also, which, personal preference, you know, some people do it on the D20s. I personally like to see a 20 when I roll a 20, so I don't tend to put them there. Oh, we got something in here that's not supposed to be in there. Let me pull that out. Ooh. What is that? I think that's a dried flower left over from pouring dice the other day. Whoops. This is why we clean our workspaces. It's fine. We're going to keep moving on here. So this is the only mold that's going to, or this is the only design today that's going to have extensive mold prep. The other ones are more just like pour and mix kind of things. So this one, we're going to take a little while to get to the resin. The other ones won't take quite so long before we get to the actual resin work. But I do like to just name that because some people are only here for the mixing and the pouring, and like, we're just not quite there yet today. And that's okay. I am prepping for a shop update next Wednesday. So if you are in the market for some cool handmade dice, definitely check out the shop. I have the link down in my like Twitch bio if you want to check that out. I'm really excited. I've got a little bit of everything this shop update. We've got dice bags and zipper pouches. There are some new jewelry pieces coming. There are new dice designs, dice singles. So definitely a little bit of everything at a wide variety of price points next Wednesday. And then whatever I have stock-wise is coming with me to RageCon in Nevada next weekend, which I'm really excited about. I've never been to RageCon. I live in California, and so we're trying something new. We're going to go somewhere new, which will be a lot of fun. Hopefully. We'll see. We'll see what happens. So at this point, the brush is getting a little staticky, which makes it a lot easier to pick up the foil, which is nice. That's kind of what we want. And I'm not super worried if the foil is like really crinkly, because we're just brushing it in. So we have this really beautiful sporadic texture. Just checking in here. It looks like the D20 could use a little bit more, so I'm going to do that foil on the end of the paintbrush shtick again. Maybe. Just so we can get the foil more down. And then we're going to do our last one, and then we get to bust out the resin. So then I will go on the like resin safety shtick, because safety is really important. And it's not talked about enough on maker spaces, in my opinion. You are welcome to use resin however you would like, as long as you at least know the safety precautions you should be taking. Like, obviously I can't force you to be safe. I can encourage you to be safe though, because resin is really toxic and we don't want people dying or developing severe allergies and not being able to do something they love. So we'll talk about resin safety and all of that once we crack that open. I just got way more foil on the mold than I did in the mold for that one. Whoops. So we are looking pretty good. Obviously, I'm kind of checking this out. So the D4 on this one got a lot more on the sides than it did on the bottom. I think I'm okay with that. The D20 definitely needs a little bit more. We kind of got more here than we did in the mold. And then I'm realizing I forgot to put foil in this one. So we're going to do that. You know, we check our progress. We make sure, because there's nothing worse than pulling dice out and realizing you didn't put something in one of the dice in the set, because then that die looks really out of place. I'm speaking from experience. I recently forgot to put clouds in 2 of the dice that I poured recently, so they look totally different from the rest of the set, which is really, really tragic, because the set is absolutely gorgeous. I was really upset when I realized I forgot the clouds on 2 of them. Luckily, it was like my jewelry mold ones, so I like had enough for the actual sets, but I would have loved to have some clouds for the actual jewelry pieces too. Alright, so we have aggressively brushed our molds with our foil. They're looking absolutely gorgeous. Again, I'm not coating it entirely, but I do want to just get enough on there so that it is shimmery, and then we just have the tiniest little amount left. I'm probably going to chuck that into the resin because I think that'll be good. I actually think we are going to add the pink, so I'm going to grab one thing really quick. That's orange, that's not pink. Just so we're all set up. I am going to put gloves on now because we are going to be opening resin. So when you're working with resin, you want to make sure you're using like nitrile gloves. These ones are technically slightly too small for me, so they're a little bit of a struggle to put on. It's fine. We make it work because sometimes you accidentally order 1,000 gloves in the wrong size, and you don't realize it until you've opened them and try and put them on. So we've got our gloves, respirators on. I have the window open. I have a fan pulling air out of the room so that we can be as safe as possible while working with this stuff. We are going to crack out the resin, and for this we're going to be using clear resin and then colored resin using Mica Powders. Hello, focus. Come on. Anyway, these are the Rolio Mica Powders. We've got Maya Blue and Fandango Pink, and we're going to be mixing that with some white alcohol ink. And then today we are opening up a brand new bottle of Paduo, or Promarine, not Paduo. I couldn't get the Paduo, couldn't ship in time. So we're going to open these up. So this is a 1-to-1 resin, meaning we mix equal parts of part A and part B in order to get the chemical reactions that we need for the resin to fully set. It's really important when you're using stuff like this that you measure it accurately. And because I'm doing 3 sets and I want to have a little bit extra since we're mixing multiple colors, I'm going to be doing 50 milliliters of each part. Because I find that I need about 90 or so to do all 3 of these molds on any given day, and because we have multiple colors, we're going to lose a little bit of resin in that process. So I'm just going to preemptively prepare for that by mixing up the 100 milliliters. I'm going to open up the part B. We'll measure out 50 of that, and then we get to start the mixing process, which is like the most important part of working with resin if you want it to be successful. Because if you don't mix it well enough, it's not going to cure, which is tragic. There is nothing worse, absolutely nothing worse than pulling dice out, being so excited about them, and then after 3 or 4 days, they're still not all the way cured. Because at that point, you can't really do anything about it. So we have our resin here. Now we need to just mix it really well for 2 to 3 minutes usually. I'm gonna move this out of the way. When I'm mixing, I am not super careful because I have a pressure pot to compress air bubbles out. So you can see as I'm stirring, it's introducing like bubbles in the resin. If I did not have a pressure pot, I would want to be a lot more careful about introducing air bubbles into my mix because they're really hard to get out. But I'm going to throw everything in a pressure pot to compress the air out at the end, so I'm not as worried about it. This is not very visually exciting to look at, but we are mixing resin. When I do this, I'm making sure I'm scraping the sides, scraping the bottom, trying to really mix everything together so we don't have any pockets of unmixed part A or part B. We're just having a good time. I did mention I am on summer vacation right now, so I have been teaching for the last 7 years. I'm actually getting ready to transition out of the classroom for next year, which is a whole thing. But the nice thing about this break is I can do like extra streams like this during the week. I've been doing a lot of pouring just to try and build up some stock for when I do go back to work, because back to school season is always really stressful. And I'm not going into the classroom, but I am starting a job as a dean of instruction, so I will be coaching teachers and building professional development for a school. And I just am anticipating that starting a new job is going to be stressful, so I'm trying to build up a backlog of poured dice so I at least have some stuff to work on while we're in that transition process. And it's kind of cool to get to pour 3 or 4 or 5 times a week, because normally I only pour on the weekends because I don't want to run my air compressor and bother the neighbors after like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, so I don't pour during the week. But we're here today and we're gonna make some really great dice. So these are looking really good. It is very, very bubbly at this point. It is not clear like it was when it started because of the air. I bought a pre-made mold set and I can never get down how much resin I need to fill it. How do you know how much resin you need for a new mold? Yeah, I'm really excited about the new job, and that's a great question. So all of my dice are made with the same masters, so I kind of have figured out just through trial and error how much I need. I always err on the side of I'd rather have a little too much than not enough. I have dump molds that I put all the extra resin in, so I'm not just throwing anything out. But one thing that you can do is doing this a couple of days before you want to pour, because once you do it, you need to completely dry out your molds. You can fill your molds with water and then dump that into a measuring cup to see like how many milliliters you need for that particular set of dice. Most full sets, depending on the sizing, because there is some variation, needs like 30 to 35. Obviously, if the dice are bigger or smaller, that will change, but you can definitely just fill your molds with water, and then I would give yourself like a 5 to 7 milliliter extra buffer, just because you're going to lose some in the cup that's not going to come out. If you're mixing multiple colors, that's going to take a little extra. So when I'm doing something like this, these take about 30 each, so I know if I'm mixing 100, I'm going to have roughly like 10 left over, which is fine for me. I don't mind having the extra. But that is a great question. That is not a dumb question at all. Like, I have no idea how much resin my chunky D20 is going to take. I probably should have figured that out, and I just didn't. So that's going to be an experiment today. I'm kind of estimating that it'll take roughly the same as a full set, but I could be wrong. So we're going to go on that journey together, and I'm probably going to have a bunch of extra resin, and I'm just going to be okay with that. Like I said, I do have dump molds that I can put everything extra in. So I'm not too worried about it, luckily. So what I just did is I separated out my clear resin into a few different cups. that we're going to use for the different colorings. I did decide we are going to do some of the pink. We're going to try it. Maybe not on all of the dice, but at least on one of them. We're going to have a little bit of clear and then the blue and the pink. So right now, I'm just separating this out into 3 smaller cups. I find that it's easier to pour in the smaller cups as well. So we're going to do that. And then we'll just set this big cup off to the side. So we're going to have a clear set, or a clear cup. I'm going to put the rest of this copper foil into, maybe, or I'm going to stick it to the edge of my mold. Whoops. All right, well, we're not doing that because it flew off of the paper onto the mold and is now stuck. I'll scrape the last little bits of this off, though. And I've got another sheet, so we're just going to cut a little bit off of here into the clear cup. And then for our colorings, we're going to be using Mica Powders. These are going to make more of an opaque color than an alcohol ink, which will make something that's more clear. I want the blue to be really vibrant. I'm going to be adding a smidge of green to the blue because it's more of like a teal color. So I have no idea where this is from. I just found it in my stash and I thought it would be a good color combo. And then we're going to use the pink. This is Fandango pink. I always want to say it's flamingo pink, but it's not. It's Fandango pink. We're just going to throw some in there. We'll give these all a good mix, and then I'll show y'all what we're working with. So the clear is just going to kind of act as a base. We've got a nice little bit of foil in that one. The blue is looking gorgeous. Got a really nice, like, rich bluish green color here. Camera angles, what are they? So that's going to be super pretty. And then we've got a nice bold pink here that we're going to add in as like a stripe of color at the end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by putting a little bit of this clear in at the bottom of each mold. I find that this just helps create a little bit more movement, color, texture, all of the above in the dice, just because the base is clear so you can kind of see a little bit more what's going on. You don't always have to do this. I just find when you're kind of working with opaques, it's nice to have a little bit of transparency somewhere in the die, just so you can see a little bit more of what's happening. So I'm starting with just a little bit, just enough to cover the bottom, and then once I've filled all the molds, I'm going to go back and add a little bit more in. For some of these. And this part is definitely just trial and error. I don't know if this is going to turn out how I want at all, which is kind of the fun part of making dice and also kind of the sucky part. Like, you don't actually know what you're going to get. So now I'm just kind of going back in and I'm trying to fill these up no more than halfway, but some of these definitely just didn't get as much as others, so I'm kind of going back and evening out some of these until my clear resin is gone. And we're going, like I said, about halfway. our clear is running out, which is perfectly fine. Okay, so now it's time for color, which is always the fun part. I'm going to move this a little bit closer so we can see better. So I'm going to start with the blue, and I'm going to fill this up about 3/4 of the way. Do I want to get a pipette for this? I might actually do that. One moment. I think we'll get a little bit more interesting texture if we use pipettes. So these are just clear pipettes. I'm going to use that to kind of section up the color so we can insert it in more interesting ways into the dice molds. Because then I can kind of bloop it around a little bit where I want it to be. And I'm noticing that the pink is coming up really transparent. And I don't want it to be see-through. So what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to bump the stand. I'm going to put a drop of white alcohol ink in here, just because that'll help make this a little more opaque without adding even more mica powder, because I don't want it to be too heavy. So hopefully this will make it, like, it's really translucent right now. So hopefully that will make it a little more opaque like the blue is. Like you can see here, this is pretty solid. You can't really see through that too much, which is what we want. We don't want to be able to see through the pink. And that is looking much better. So I'm going to fill all of these with the blue. And when I'm doing this, I'm just kind of moving the pipette up and down a little bit to kind of create some bloops almost. Some nice texture in there. So that as it kind of moves around and settles, it's not just like a flat layer of color. We're like stabbing up and down into the resin until the mold is about 3/4 of the way full. There is not any rhyme or reason to this. I just think it'll create some more interesting movements. For me, dice looks better when there's movement in them, so that's what we're trying to do. Just keep on doing this. So my vision for this is kind of just to capture the flow of fabric almost. Like the Blake Lively dress was beautiful for many reasons. It had many details that made it a really gorgeous dress, but the way that the fabric moved and laid was so pretty. So I definitely want to try and capture that, which is why we're using mica powder instead of alcohol ink. I find that it just creates a really beautiful shimmer and kind of texture in the dye when it works correctly. Whether or not this will actually work correctly remains to be seen, but you know, a girl can hope. It is looking very swirly up on the top, so hopefully as we add the pink in and things start to settle, we keep that. Or these are going to look terrible. You know, sometimes that is how it is. As a dice maker, you never quite know what you're going to get. Sometimes your idea is perfect. Sometimes you pull them and you're like, the heck am I looking at? So we shall see. If you are tuned in, you're watching, I will be posting demolding sneaks and reveals and progress photos over on my Instagram of all the things we're pouring today. This resin takes like 12 to 18 hours to be able to pull, so I might be able to pull it tonight. If not, I will definitely be pulling tomorrow morning to show off all of the gorgeousness that we are making today. It really just depends. I don't think it's supposed to be as hot today, so it might take a little bit longer for this to cure. So I might not be demolding tonight, but either way, I will be showing off all of the things we're making on stream today over on Instagram. So if you're curious to see finished products, I definitely recommend giving my Instagram account a follow. It is linked down in the bio. It's just instagram.com/sunflower.dice. And I do stories and videos and all sorts of things demolding dice. So if you're curious to see what dice look like when they're not inked, that's a great place to get some more behind the scenes. All right, so we're just gonna bloop some more in here. We're almost done with the blue. It's got some really great textures on top, which is giving me hope. It's very subtle, so my webcam is not the greatest. It's probably not going to pick that up, but it's fine. We're going to make it work. The pipette is slow. I normally do syringes instead of pipettes because you can kind of control the air intake a little bit better, but I am out of syringes currently, so we're using the pipettes instead. All right, the blue is finished, so now we're going to go in with the pink, and I don't want there to be a lot of pink, but we are just going to kind of do some swoops in some sort of like a diagonal shape in each of the die to kind of represent that like sash of pink that unfurled to reveal the rest of the dress. I think blue and pink is also just a pretty color combo, so hopefully this works out. So we're just kind of going back and forth in the die molds to fill it up with the pink. And then whatever resin is left over will get added to my dump molds. I have a few. I use one for resin jewelry, just like earring pieces. I have a tic-tac-toe mold. I have meeples. So all of the resin does get used. We try and use everything we can so we're not wasting any material. The meeples have been a new thing. I've been including them with shop orders as just fun little freebies, and people have seemed to think they're kind of cute. So I don't know if those are going to come to the shop as just a regular thing you can purchase, but they are definitely a thing, and they're pretty cute. It's fun to have little colored little things to add as freebies into orders. I might turn some of the meeples into keychains as well. I think they'd be a cute little charm on a keychain. So we've got some options. So again, we're just filling this pipette up. And then I am making sure to stick the tip of the pipette down into the resin because I want to make sure it is mixing in with the blue and it's not just sitting on top, because that would be unfortunate. Gotta coax it up a little bit. So the other designs we're pouring today, we are going to be testing out my new Chonky D20 mold, and we're going to do that with a past design. The Helianthus design, which is a sunflower set inspired by my current Strixhaven campaign character. It's got sunflowers and some blue flowers and clear resin and some white clouds. So we'll be doing something similar in that die as we are doing right now with this pink, where we're trying to kind of create some movement in the die. It'll be a little different, but I've also never made a chonky die before, so I'm hoping I don't mix too much resin and it doesn't overheat and start flash curing, because that would be really annoying. So we'll see what happens. We are almost done here. And then the blanks, I did also make blanks, which are basically smaller versions of my dice without numbers. that you can pour and then cast in a shell that has the numbers. So you can get a little more creative. You can paint on them. People will cover them in stickers. They'll paint them. They'll just create like layered designs. And today we're going to be doing a black sand Northern Lights design with some sand that I got from my trip to Iceland. And the reason I've been waiting for the blanks to do this is because all of my molds have the D20 on the, or like the high face on the bottom. And I don't want the sand to be on the bottom. I want the view of the like sparkly stuff to be on the bottom. So I've been waiting for my blanks to come in to tackle this project, and they are finally here. So we'll get to try out some new techniques, and I can walk through how I make my Galaxy dice, which has been a really fun process to learn. Okay, so we have some extra resin. I am going to just make some meeples really quick. Which are just little, you know, like people-shaped figures, if you're not familiar with meeples. And then the rest of this I'm gonna pour into a single cup, and we will pour that into my tic-tac-toe mold. I'm just gonna fill this up, scrape as much of this out as I can so that we can use as much of it as possible. And then I'm just collecting all of the resin scraps over here as well. All right, I'm gonna pour this into that dump mold really quickly, and then I will walk through how I put my caps on so that we're ready to move on to our next design. Alright. It's always fun to layer colors into the same cup because as they pour, the colors kind of come out in different capacities. So you get some really interesting combinations. And then the tic-tac-toe mold is fun because it just, you know, slowly gets filled up over the course of 2 to 4 weeks, depending on how often I'm pouring dice. And so it's kind of cool to just see the evolution of whatever I've been pouring lately. All right, I am wiping my hands off a little bit on a paper towel. So the last step before we get our caps on is I do just hit these quickly on the surface with a lighter to pop any of the major surface bubbles that have come up. Like I mentioned, these do go in a pressure pot, so they will, all the air will get compressed out, but any large bubbles we want to try and get out of the way before the lids go on. And then these just get pressed on gently. We want to pat them down enough so that they're secure, but not so hard that we're like creating a vacuum seal, essentially. That's not great. So we're just pressing these down a little bit. I like to kind of rub out from the middle in to make sure they're really set on there. And then these are gonna go on the caddy, and we're gonna move on to our chonky die, which I'm really excited about. And our blank. So I'm going to be mixing up the resin for both of these at the same time, but we'll be working on one at a time. Excuse my hand. We're going to start with the chonky mold, which is going to have lots of floral-y goodies in it. And we'll also have a similar cloud technique. So this is the mold here. You can kind of see inside of it. I messed up a little bit and I put the cap face as the 20 instead of the 1. Normally I do the 1, that way if I have to do a repair, it's not on the number that you want to see. Thanks so much for stopping by. Yeah, I can't wait to show off the results later. Have a great rest of your day. Alright, we're going to continue. Here, we need to mix up some more resin. This is the repetitive part. I am going to mix up 80. 80 should be enough for both the chalk and the blank. That way I don't have to do a third round of mixing. So we're going to start just like we did last time with the part A and the part B. So this time I'm going to go 40 and 40 because the 80 should be enough. I'm making assumptions here that the chalk is going to take about as much resin as a full set. If I have to mix a little more, I have to mix a little more, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. So we've got our part A. We'll go in and add our part B. I over poured the part A, so we are ending up with like 110 instead of 80 because I poured 50 of part B or part A instead of 40. It's kind of the downside of having a brand new bottle of resin is you kind of over pour sometimes, but that's fine. Like I said, I have other molds. We can just make another set of dice if I need to. The resin will get used, so I'm not too worried about it. So again, we're going to start by mixing. We need to mix this for a solid 2 to 3 minutes. Some other exciting things coming up. This is a good time for just like updates and whatnot. I mentioned I'm going to be at RageCon in Nevada at the end of this month. And then at the end of August, I will be at Silicon, which is the Adam Savage organized convention in Silicon Valley at the end of August, which I'm super excited about. I just got the acceptance for that. And that'll be my first not tabletop specific convention. So I'm kind of excited to see how that goes. So far I've only done local conventions and they've all been gaming focused, whereas this is just more of a generalized convention. So that's kind of exciting. It's also a little nerve-wracking. We'll just kind of have to see how that goes. And then I am thinking, obviously I'm looking into some other conventions for the second half of the year, because conventions are a great place, not just to like sell stuff, which obviously it is a great place to kind of sell inventory, but it's also a great place to like meet other makers. I've met some really cool people on the local like Bay Area convention circuit. So it's kind of exciting to spread the wings a little bit, so to speak. And it's also a little stressful because you want to make sure you have a lot of stock. You don't know what people are going to be interested in. Different conventions have different vibes, and so what's popular at one convention might not be popular at the other. For example, I've done 2 conventions so far this year. The first one in February, I did not sell any jewelry. I sold 1 pair of earrings the entire 3 days that I was there. And then the last convention I did at the end of May, I sold all of my jewelry. Like, I think I went with about 30 to 35 pieces of jewelry. I came home with 5. So, like, that was like, oh, I don't have any jewelry for the next one. So I've been working on restocking jewelry and dice bags. Dice bags were also really popular at the last one, so I've been working on that, which is always fun. Like, it's fun to kind of work on some of those things that aren't just dice. I really enjoy making the jewelry. Sewing has been a really fun, relaxing hobby. So we do a little bit of everything here at Sunflower Dice. Alright, this is looking really well mixed. Again, it's really frothy because I am not careful when I mix my resin because I don't necessarily need to be. Okay, so for this, we need this. I'm going to start by pouring some of this out into here. And then we're going to get a little bit of some silver mica for a little bit of a sparkle, because I don't make anything if it's not sparkly. So this, I have had this Slice of Moon silver mica since I started making dice 2 years ago, and I am just now like halfway through. It lasts forever. It's amazing. And then we're also going to put some of this imitation gold leaf, just a little bit, into the mold as well, or into this clear resin. This stuff is kind of chunky to start, but it does break down pretty well. So I'm just going to put a little bit in here because I want like tiny, not tiny, but like smaller flecks as opposed to like big chunks. So this is going to be a floral set, and we're going to start by just putting a small amount of clear in to make sure that the bottom is all the way coated and that resin is going to get into all those corners, because sometimes florals can impede resin movement. So for this design, we're going to be using 2 colors of florals. We're going to be using these like blue greens, which are absolutely stunning. And I'm just going to take this whole bunch and kind of tuck them into the mold here. It's a large die, so I don't really have to be careful with space. And then we're also going to take some sunflower petals and kind of tuck those in and kind of try and manipulate them so that they're around the blue ones and that's not just like crushing the blue ones. I'm going to put like 5 or 6 in here probably. So this is my Helianthus design. It is a kind of wintry sunflower vibes, these blue flowers, and then the white clouds we're going to put in here give off very, very wintry vibes. They're very pretty. So now I'm going to just do a slow pour to get this mold about halfway to 2/3 full. I'm going to stop and let it kind of settle a little bit. The flowers in here take up a lot of space, so you kind of want to squeeze your mold a little bit to get out some trapped air and let that seep in. And while that's seeping, I'm going to prep our clouds, which is just going to be some more of this clear resin, several drops of white alcohol ink. We might need a little bit more. I've like never poured a chunky die, so I'm like, I don't know how much resin it's gonna use. It's fine. It's fine. We have stuff to use the extra resin with. I'm not that worried about it. Put a little bit of sparkle in the cloud, but not as much because I don't want it to be overpowered. Okay, so we're going to take another pipette, kind of like we did with the last one. Just trying to do a check to see how full this die is, and it's so hard to tell. So because the 1 is at the bottom and I want the 20 to be more clear, it's going to be really important that we stick this like all the way into the die as we like let the white resin enter. And this is going to just create some really nice cloudy wisps. I don't think I made enough cloud resin, but that's fine. We can make more. So this is just white resin that we're putting in the pipette. I'm going to stick the pipette all the way down to the bottom as I kind of lift and swirl a little bit. We'll do one more, and then I think I'll top it off with some more of the clear. And then we get to move into our Northern Lights design, which I'm so excited about. I've done a test run of this design, and they turned out really great. minus some weird texturing where the sand is, which is another reason we're going to use the blanks for this. So again, we're just kind of letting the clouds swirl, and then we are going to top this off with clear because I want the D20 to be clear. Like, I want the 20 to be more of a window than an opaque part. So we're going to let this sit because I don't want words. Words just left me. I want to make sure it has a chance to kind of get some of the bigger bubbles out before we cap it off, because there are a lot of florals in there. So while we're doing that, we're going to go ahead and start on the Galaxies. And to start with this, we are going to start with some black resin. Here. It doesn't need to be super opaque just because we're going to be putting sand into it. So this mold is a blanks mold, meaning these are slightly smaller dice and they don't have numbers on them, because you're going to put them into your regular mold, and that's what will give them the numbers. You're kind of going to encase the numbers, or encase the shell, the blank. You're going to encase the blank in the shell. Words are hard today. So I'm just putting a very thin layer of this black resin in, because this is going to act as a base for anything that the sand doesn't cover. Then we get to use the really exciting stuff. So this is sand that I collected on my trip to Iceland. So I'm going to scoop some of this out of this bag, just so it's a little easier to work with. It is volcanic sand. It's got a little bit of a sparkle to it, but I mostly want that like nice crunchy texture. So we're going to just put some of this into each of the dice. Kind of pat it around a little bit. I'm okay if it's like not flat, because I kind of want that inconsistent level, just for some more, you know, visual interest. So I'm just patting this down in there. And we are going to be putting other resins on top of it, so it doesn't have to be fully covered. Doing a quick look, I think I could put a little more in the D6. And probably a little more in the D20. And then the D12. Alright, so that's the base. I find that a black base really helps with your galaxy designs, because it helps the color shifts pop. It just looks a lot more interesting. So now we're gonna make the main color that we're gonna use, which is gonna be like a nice greenish blue. So I am using the Ranger alcohol inks for this. This is the patina color, which is a really nice like blue-green. I'm gonna mix that with a drop of pistachio, just to get a little more green in there. And then we're going to add a bunch of color shift pigments and powders to this. So we're going to start with the silver mica, and then I'm going to go in with my chromatic castle color shifting powders in a variety of colors. So we have color spray, which is like a blue purple color shift. And I don't have measurements for this. I just kind of tap some in. We're also going to use life essence, which is more like green to purple. We're going to use a little bit of charm, which is mostly just a purple shimmer. These are really hard to pick up on camera, but they're super beautiful. And then we have Skilla, which is like a pink kind of color shift. This is a new container, so I do have to open it. And then just for a little bit of difference, we are going to use Grindalo, which isn't a powder, but it is kind of like a chunky glitter and like a yellow-green. And we don't want to use too much of that because that's not going to mix in. Then I'm going to do a color test just to see, like, is that the color I'm wanting? And it's a light green, and I think that's going to be a good place to start because we can always darken it up. So now I'm going to go in and just pour a thin layer of this over the black, because we have to add some other stuff in here before we fully fill it with resin. So now that we have that filled, we need to go in with some other stuff that's going to create some dimension. So these are some cut up pieces of Angelina fiber, or film, not fiber. So they're basically like color shift cellophane pieces. And when these get crinkled up, they create a lot of dimension. And so we're going to crinkle these up and just put them in the molds. I have a couple of different colors here. I have one that's like a purple blue, and I have one that's like a yellowy green. Ooh. So we're just kind of crinkling these up. I'm doing these one at a time. I will probably put 2 in most of the dice, but I'm going to do them separately. Just so we crinkle into a little ball, and then we're placing into the mold. You cannot really see. Let me rearrange a little bit. All right, we'll move this over so we can see a little bit better. Eventually I'll get one of those like overhead cameras setups, but I don't have one of those right now. So we're doing the best we got. So yeah, this is definitely, you can do more, you can do less. A lot of it is how you crinkle it and then how you place it into your molds. And if you have a dark enough background color to contrast, which is why we started with the black in this design, so that we had that contrast. So again, it's just crinkle and place. You can do bigger pieces, you can do smaller crinkles. It definitely just kind of depends on what you want. And then for most of these, I'm going to go in and add a second piece just because one tends to not be enough. But I like having the 2 separate pieces just to get some more visual interest. Alrighty. And these are inspired by my trip to Iceland. We went to Iceland in February. It was winter. It was very cold, because that's the best time to see the northern lights there. And that was like my big goal for the trip. And we did get to see them, and it was absolutely beautiful. And I cried a little bit. It was just a very surreal experience. And that's something I'm like really grateful that I got to do. So I don't really live far enough north in the US for that to be like a possibility, so it was really cool to see them. I don't do winters. It was very cold, which was really tough, but it was definitely worth it just because we did get to see the lights, which was absolutely stunning. Oh. Okay. So this is looking good. It's a little hard to see just because there's so much going on here, and with the black at the bottom, it's just a little hard to see. I am going to pour a little bit more of this lighter green on top, and then we're going to make a darker color to kind of inject in between the black and the lighter color. Again, that's just for some more visual contrast. It makes everything pop a little bit more. So to do that, we're going to add a little bit more of that pistachio and a little bit more resin, because we are a little low on it. I don't want to add too much because we don't need a lot more, but I want to just make sure we have enough that we're not going to overload the resin with mica or with alcohol ink, because that can do screwy things. We're going to go in with this Glacier alcohol ink, which is like a darker blue. We're going to mix that just to see color-wise how that's looking. And it's just making like a darker, more blue version of this. And I want it to be a smidge more green. So I'm going to add one more drop of the Laguna just to try and balance out some of that blue. And that is looking beautiful. So again, we're going to go in with the pipette. We're doing a lot of pipettes this stream. But I don't have any syringes, and I want to make sure that this darker color is kind of injected into these. So we're just scooping some up. You can see that blue a lot better as it's kind of coming out of the cup there. And we're just going to stick this into the dice, kind of underneath the surface of that lighter green, but not all the way to the bottom. I don't want this injected where the black is. Because I want the black to stay on the bottom. Again, just going underneath the surface in a couple of spots to bring that lighter green up. Oh, there was too much air in the pipette for that one. That's why we got that little air bubble burst. So normally with my other molds, I would do this in reverse, where we start with the lightest color, we add a darker color, and then the black on top, because my other molds, the logos or the high faces are at the bottom of the mold. But because we want that black sand at the bottom, it's going to sink because it's a little bit heavier. So we want to make sure that it's not going to sink as we set our space up, so to speak. I am also just checking. I'm seeing that the pipettes have settled a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and squeeze the rest of the molds, the resin out of those other pipettes into the tic-tac-toe mold, just so that we're getting all of that resin out. This is looking really good. We're going to let this sit for a minute. I'm going to go back to my big chonky mold. I'm seeing some nice bubbles up at the top that we're going to go ahead and pop. But I'm not seeing any like drastic loss of resin. So I'm going to just put a smidge of resin on top just to dome this off. And then we're going to cap both of these and call it a day. I am going to grab the lighter one more time to pop our Galaxy dice here. And then we're going to put the lids on these. Alrighty, and then we have a good amount of resin left to maybe do one more design, which is going to be a little bit of a chaos design. I don't really know if it's going to turn out, so we're going to just kind of see and hope for the best. Okay, let's put the lids on these. This is the point in the pour where we just have stuff everywhere. So we're gonna make sure, again, we want to press it down some, but not so hard that we're squeezing all of the resin out. We'll grab this other lid. Give that a nice tuck to make sure it's locked in place, and then we'll set this off to the side. So with the rest of this resin, I am going to essentially dump a bunch of glitter into it and just kind of see what happens. We're gonna get it nice and thick with some chunky glitters. So I have a couple of things. These are from Glitter Lambs. I have this like hollow chunky glitter, so we're gonna put some of that in. Oh, that is sparkly. Then we're also gonna add these rainbow sprinkles. Just all of them. We're gonna add the whole bag of rainbow sprinkles. And then we also have some hearts that I'm gonna throw in as well. We'll give this a nice stir. And then I'm gonna dump back in the rest of this clear that has that little bit of glitter foil in it. Not glitter, it's just foil. We're gonna dump these in some dice molds and see what happens. Because sometimes you just need a little chaos. We're going for something real chunky, just a lot. And we're gonna see how it turns out. So we've got this nice chunky, colorful mix. I'm gonna tint it the slightest bit pink, just for a little bit of color. And then I'm gonna grab a mold. Alright, let me move some of this stuff out of the way. Alright, we've got another mold here. We've got our super chunky glitter mix. I am just going to pour this as is into our molds. This is a thicker resin, so I'm hoping that the stuff will stay suspended, especially since it's been mixed for a little while. There's a very real possibility that all of this stuff just settles down at the bottom, and you know, if that's what happens, that's what happens. Or it could look really cool. You never know. But I'm hoping that this will suspend enough just because this resin is like super thick and is starting to set. All right. Gonna let this set for a minute. I am gonna just scoop some resin out to kind of try and top some of these off, since this is a chunkier resin. I realize chunky is not everyone's favorite words also, but that's the only way to describe this. And then the rest of this is going to get used for some earrings, so I'm going to pour that really quick. Apologies for that weird bit of silence. My dump molds are just setting on a table across the room, so I did have to go grab that. So theoretically, these will just be super fun, clumpy candy vibes, is kind of what I'm hoping for. We'll see what actually happens with them. I mean, the remains of the cup looks very cool, so one can only hope that we'll get some cool stuff. All right, so now all that is left basically is to cap this off and then clean up. So the last step is putting everything into the pressure pot, which I will not be doing while the stream is running because it's the air compressor is super loud and nobody needs to hear that on stream for 4 or 5 minutes. Plus it's like off camera. So we are going to start wrapping up the stream here. Right now I am just scooping all of whatever resin is left into my dump mold so that we're not wasting anything. There's not much left after that chaotic little sprinkle pour, so that's really nice. Just kind of scraping all the cups out. So these tic-tac-toe molds, I don't sell them in shop. I do sell them at conventions just because they're like really kind of large and awkward to ship. But they're really fun. It's just kind of fun to collect all of your resin over the course of a few weeks and see kind of what you get at the end. You never really know. Some of them have turned out really awful and really ugly. Some of them have been really cool. So it's kind of just a fun thing to do, just so that we're not wasting anything. I try really hard to use as much of the resin as possible so that it's not getting wasted. But that is about where we're going to wrap up. I'm going to put the lid on this beautiful, beautiful set of dice here. And I will go ahead and close out with some stream announcements. So a couple of things. Let me remove my gloves so I can type on my keyboard without ruining it. Just gonna tuck all this into the trash can so that it's ready to go. We need that. This can go in the trash. Okay. Let me take off my gloves. So a couple of things. If you are interested in seeing the results of these pours, I would definitely recommend following my Instagram page. I will be posting demolding videos to kind of show off what we made today, because it's always really fun to see that end result. And I say end, it's a process. It's a process. Because they do still need sanded, polished, inked, so they're not like finished yet, but it is kind of cool to see those results of the stream that you just watched. So if you are interested in that, those will either get posted tonight or tomorrow morning, depending on if my resin is ready to pull. It is a little cooler today, so it might not be quite ready tonight. I might have to wait until tomorrow morning, which is not a big deal. But definitely keep an eye out for that. If you are here because you like Dungeons & Dragons and also like watching Twitch streams or actual plays, tomorrow night I will be on my friend Margot's channel for our Strixhaven Curriculum of Wonder campaign. It is a super fun campaign. We're getting ready to head into year 3 of Wizard School, which is just kind of crazy to believe that we're already at year 3. It is a super great cast. The story is really great. Margot's a really phenomenal DM that's creating a really great story for us all to play through. So definitely, definitely, definitely stay tuned and join in for that. We had some pretty big stuff happen last week, so I'm excited to resolve that. Otherwise, you can find me here on this channel on Tuesday nights playing a Kingdom Hearts marathon, and on Sunday afternoons doing a Sims 4 Legacy challenge. And then I may be going live tomorrow to check out the new werewolf kit or game pack that's coming out for The Sims 4. I'll post on Twitter if that is something I am going to be doing. Anyway, thank you all so much for hanging out today. I hope you all have a great time, and I will see you all later. Bye, everyone.